Hello, this is Ignorance is Bliss. I'm Lisa.
I'm Farah.
I'm Hotan.
Okay, so today we're talking about BLM. If you don't know what BLM stands for,
Where have you been living?
yeah, it stands for Black Lives Matter, okay? Obviously it's a huge, massive topic. So we're just kind of talking about our personal experience, our take on it from where we are here in Dubai. We're also going to be talking about some personal experiences or anecdotes of racism that we've seen, and a bit later on we're going to be talking about books and TV shows that we found interesting and that may be educational on the topic of BLM. Okay, so it's been a while now, okay, since the murder of George Floyd on camera, okay. So, Farah, can you just tell us a bit about like when you found out about it and how you felt?
I think it's important just to start off with BLM in general, because I think there's a misconception that it's a new movement, and it's been going on for quite a while. So for those that don't know much about BLM, it started in 2013 after the murder of Trayvon Martin. So he's a 17-year-old teenager, African American, and he was walking from the shops, so he was going home from the shops, and he was unarmed, minding his business, going about his daily business, and he was shot and killed by an individual called George Zimmerman. So George Zimmerman was acquitted of all charges, and that led to the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and that's when the movement started.
Gaining traction at first.
Absolutely. So then you had things like hashtag activism, where everyone was tweeting, putting things on Instagram and social media, because Trayvon Martin, that's not the only case, like it happens all the time.
It wasn't that long ago. I remember feeling the exact same way as I feel now, having seen, or a while ago now, having seen the George Floyd murder on camera. It was just really sad, and genuinely that day when I had seen that video, because I didn't want to watch the video because I knew it was going to be I knew what I was going to see was something that was going to affect me, but also I wanted to see it because I think it's important to watch these things. And I just felt so sad. It was so heavy on my heart, because it's just such a sad thing to have to witness. And I wasn't even there. Obviously, I'm watching it through the television. And it's not that I'm not aware of Black Lives Matter generally, and I wasn't aware of it at the Trayvon Martin, case. But I think this time it was just in your face so much more. With the Trayvon Martin case, we didn't necessarily get to see.
It wasn't caught on camera.
It wasn't caught on camera, and we had Zimmerman.
It was the tipping point.
Absolutely. And I cried that day. I really did, because it just hurt my heart in so many different ways on a human level as a black woman. Just feeling like, how could somebody do that?
Absolutely. And the reason why it went viral, was so big, one of the reasons is because obviously with the ongoing pandemic, everybody's in lockdown, everyone's at home sharing this information. So people really had the time to watch this, those who chose to watch the video of the murder, and really digest the systemic racism that occurs in policing in the US and just in globally. I think that was a real kind of turning point for lots of people to realize that, okay, wow.
He wasn't on his own. He was with other officers. I think that made it even more just disgusting, really. It was like, well, why did nobody, if there's one bad apple and he's doing the wrong thing, you've all received training, why is nobody...
But also the fact that it happened in broad daylight in front of everyone. There were people around recording, and that didn't faze the officers at all. So they obviously thought what they were doing was completely fine and normal, right? And that's the thing.
Well, they knew they wouldn't be held to account, or they felt.
Absolutely.
We don't know what they felt, but that's the impression you get.
I remember being angry after I cried and was really sad. I think the next thing, I'm not going to lie, was anger. Just why do some people think they're better than other people based on skin colour? It's ridiculous.
And the fact that you find it acceptable to do that to another person.
Just horrific. Like, where's your heart? Where's your common sense? Where's your heart? You know, because I think we should all feel pain at somebody else's pain. And I think that's what shocked me the most.
That the death itself, the murder, obviously is shocking, but what followed and the kind of divided opinions about it was also shocking to a certain extent, because just while you're talking there, it reminded me of some of the reactions I saw from people that started not very long after we witnessed this murder on camera, started saying, oh yeah, but he was a criminal and he had George Floyd, that is, had a criminal record, and started bringing things up about him and his past. And that, I really found it difficult to understand why people were trying to justify the murder of this man. It doesn't matter whether he was a criminal. Like, that shouldn't matter at all.
No, it shouldn't matter at all. It's the act that's a problem.
Exactly.
The act of the officer killing an innocent man, regardless of his personal matters. We're not judging him as an individual. We're looking at the act, which is unacceptable, right?
Leaning on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds when this man is telling you he can't breathe repeatedly. He's calling out for his mother.
That's the bit that, I mean, not that all of it wasn't sad, but I think at that point, it's just like, how could you?
And not believe in him.
So in regards to the hashtag Black Lives Matter, we also had other hashtags that came about. So hashtag Blue Lives Matter, which was for police officers, and hashtag All Lives Matter. So what do you guys think about that? Because that's clearly a misconception on Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Because Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that all lives don't matter.
All lives matter. Obviously, that's why we're upset when we see a video of somebody dying on camera. Has nothing to do. I mean, in this particular case, of course, there's a greater issue at hand, which BLM addresses, but it's all lives do matter. Everybody knows that. Everybody should know that. Black Lives Matter has come about because of the fact that has come into question for some people. So it needs to be pointed out that Black lives do matter. It's not to negate other lives. I think that's just
to highlight that Black lives also matter.
Yeah.
There's like a silent 2, isn't there, at the end of that Black Lives Matter. It's Black Lives Matter 2. And for so long, they haven't mattered. Black lives haven't mattered as much as other lives. That is the point. I personally wouldn't ever use the hashtag All Lives Matter, but
because it takes away from the movement.
It's a distraction. It's a derailing, and I know that some people don't understand when they use the hashtag that that's what they're doing, because they think, but I care about all lives, and that's fine. But we're talking about Black lives.
Equally, I'm going to say there are also people who may be using it. In order to, or do realise how they're using it, and using All Lives Matter because it's a way to distract from the cause, or they don't necessarily agree with the whole Black Lives Matter hashtag. I think that's quite dangerous as well, because if it's, I mean, I'm black, so obviously I care about that hashtag for various different reasons, but if it was Chinese Lives Matter or Indian Lives Matter, I would never pipe in with All Lives Matter.
Like, I'm obviously not black, but for me, I would never use All Lives Matter because I understand that there's systemic issues that black people face. We know that in the UK alone, black people are 3 times more likely to be arrested than their white counterparts. 7 times
more likely to be stopped and searched.
Exactly. So there are real issues that black people face. So for me, I don't think you need to be black to identify with Black Lives Matter. You just need to be a human and realise that, of course, all lives matter, but Black Lives Matter, therefore all lives matter.
Yeah.
So you were talking about relating to Black Lives Matter movement, even though you're not black yourself. It's quite a big question. I know you're not the representative of all non-black people, obviously. But why do you think that some people who aren't black may have an issue or find it difficult to identify with the movement?
I don't agree with the fact that people don't identify with the movement because they're not black. I think it's an empathy thing. Obviously, I'm an ethnic minority. In my culture, my community, we also face racism. So maybe I can relate easier than maybe other groups, because in my community and in my ethnicity, we also face issues with racism. So personally, I think it's just an empathy problem, maybe. Because you don't need to, I don't think you need to identify with something to be on board. Do you know what I mean? It's just,
and to
bad
say
is bad. Yeah, wrong is wrong, bad is bad. Like, we're all humans here. We know we all have a moral code. So if you see something like that, if you see that video, I don't think anyone's going to sit there and say, well, if anyone does sit there and say that's completely acceptable, for me, that's an issue that you have within yourself.
there's a conscience issue there, because I think we should have a conscience that's basic to all of us, and that conscience should tell us.
There's a universal
code for right and wrong and murder.
Yeah, I think why it might, I don't know why it's hard for people to empathise with the movement or get on board or see it for what it is. I think as ethnic minorities, we are hyper aware of our race.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're hyper aware of it.
And
you can't escape
racism.
it. You can't escape it because you know that your race is not the default.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think that's part of it, why it might be easier for somebody that's not black to identify with the movement and to show their support quickly, and to ask questions and to find out and to talk to friends, why it might be easier sometimes.
For an ethnic minority.
Because to us, thinking about racism and thinking about your race is not new. You think about it every day. You can't escape it. You know somebody that's faced racism. You might have gone through it yourself. It's just part of your life, something that you live with.
And every time a video like that comes out, or any time we hear about something like that, I think it hurts more. It hurts more and more and more and more, because it's just it's an amalgamation of things, daily experiences, things you hear people say maybe towards you, maybe things you see on TV, things you read in the newspaper, and then that video comes out after so many other similar incidents, and it's just like, no, that's not on actually. I'm really happy with how far Black Lives Matter has got in terms of support this time around. Not that, I think it's much bigger this time around. Why do you think it's been bigger than it was when it first started with Trayvon Martin? Because I think it went global. I think the marches went global.
I would say the reason why I think it's gone global is because of how horrendous and horrific the clip was. Because this has happened before. So what's happened is there's nothing new about it. I think the only thing that's new is that it was caught on camera and it was in broad daylight. Everyone was there. No one was being secretive about it. So I think that really disgusted a lot of people.
I think another reason why this time it did go global is because there were 3 murders, 3 deaths of black people within a short period of time. We had the jogger, Ahmaud Arbery. We had Breonna Taylor. Police went into her house. She obviously was shot there. And then we had George Floyd. So I think that, and no action being taken, or slow to take action. Obviously, the things have changed, and police officers were arrested in the end. Still, no, I don't think anyone's been arrested for Breonna Taylor yet. But yeah, I think that's also part of the reason why it did go global. Okay, girls, I want to talk about allyship. And obviously massive online support or visual support that we were seeing from all different people, celebrities tweeting, companies tweeting, people posting things, politicians posting things about it, people taking the knee in football. We saw this with the season that's just happened. Before every match in the UK, people were taking the knee to show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. So our timelines now have gone back to normal, haven't they? So how can we keep the movement going? How can we ensure, or how can we know that it wasn't just for show because it was of the moment? How can we make sure this movement keeps on going and that it actually leads to real change?
That's such a big question. There's no doubt about the fact that does need to, the movement needs to keep going, and change needs to happen in a lot of different ways. And I think change needs to be tailored to individual countries, because racism isn't the same everywhere. It's not experienced the same in different places. But it would be a shame. We all need to kind of make sure we keep going, and we can do that through social media. But I think education is probably the way forward. Continue to educate ourselves. I think Black Tuesday, the whole point of that was to go and read something, to go and educate yourself, to go and and if you don't know, to go and ask someone who does know, do some research. I think that's going to be a bit of a struggle, because we know the media likes to bring certain news to the forefront, make other news less worthy, and I think that there are always distractions. And there have been distractions since then on things that I find wildly not important. Celebrity gossip, you know, all sorts of things. And I think that that's dangerous, and we need to keep, but it's the how. How do we keep bringing it to the forefront? Because individual people can do it. But I think it needs to be big support.
I remember the week following, I said to myself, I made a promise to myself. I said, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be unapologetically myself all of the time. This is me in my small way. This is what I said. I'm going to be unapologetically myself, because I have had to minimize myself in the past, depending on where I've been, who I've been with. And I said, I'm going to call out racism and problematic things to do with race whenever I hear it. And I've already failed.
Why do you think that is?
I've already felt, because it's too hard, and it happens all the time. I go and hang out with people that are not black or not ethnic minorities. They'll say something problematic, and I'm like, we're having such a nice time. I don't want to bring it up. Do you know what I'm saying? But it happens too many times, and at first you're like, okay, maybe I'll say something, and then you think, this is literally happening every day.
So it becomes a bit tiring.
It becomes tiring, and you don't want to be that person every time to ruin the mood or bring down the
dynamics of the group. So that's tricky.
It's very tricky in practice.
And a lot of those times, people may not even know what they've said is problematic.
They don't know. And I'll say an example here, that something that happened recently is somebody asked me where I'm from, and I said I'm from Seychelles, and that person said to me, oh, how exotic.
I have issues with that word, exotic.
And you know, it's not a big deal, as in, it's not, is it the worst thing someone could do? No, it's not. But the fact is, there's an issue with that, because I'm not a wild animal and I'm not a wild bird, so like, I don't like to be called exotic. But I know that person meant it as a compliment. Am I then going to stop them and say, actually, that's a bit problematic that you said that. So this is the thing that I want to know how to do. And if you're watching and you know the answer, how can I call out things like this, little things in language that people use that's problematic in my view? How can I call it out in a non-offensive way? Because we have to, like, it's a shame, but we do have to think of always, I don't want to offend the other person, even though they've just offended me, which is mad, right? Anyway, if you've got the answer to that, please tell me.
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
So what kind of things can we do on an individual basis to keep the movement alive in our own little way?
So I think something that I can do to keep the momentum going is start off by looking within my community. So for example, within the South Asian community, we do have things such as colorism. So I think it's important to address issues we have in our community first.
And not just the South Asian community, colorism is rife.
Absolutely, but it's definitely a problem within South Asia, and that has stemmed from the British Empire and the Western beauty ideals. So I think it's important to tackle those on, and then keep the momentum going through things like hashtag activism. The reason why this movement is so big at the moment is because of hashtag activism. So I think it's important to tweet about it. I think it's important to highlight issues, because they don't see that as a problem. And if you don't see things like colorism and hierarchy when it comes to colour, that's a problem, because you're oblivious to things like, not racism, but you're oblivious to subtle things. So I think it's really important, number one, to acknowledge the issues we have, such as colorism, racism, etc. Then the second step is to do something about it. But you can't tackle racism if you don't think it exists. Do you know what I mean? Acknowledging that there's a problem, why is there an issue with being a darker shade? Why is that a problem? So exactly. So hang on a minute.
What does it change for black people? But this South Asians recognizing colorism, what does that change?
Or people in general recognizing colorism.
What does it change?
I think it highlights a problem.
Okay.
You don't agree?
No, I think it's a thing that needs to be discussed, but for me, I think it's so tricky now. This is the bit that I'm really battling with internally. Like, we are, so now people are aware. The movement's gone global, everybody knows. I've sort of seen lots of people saying, I need to be educated, I'm going to start by educating myself. These are the books I'm reading, please give me a list of books, tell me what to do, Okay, you've read the book, You've watched the show.
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
But Lisa, for them, that's baby steps. Do you know what I mean? For them, at least they are finally acknowledging that there's a problem. Whereas previously, they might have been completely oblivious. So I think it's important.
Okay, I'm getting a bit emotive.
No, it's good.
Because I'm like, what rock?
We're gonna fall out in a minute.
Not you, but like, what rock are you living under that you didn't know this was a thing happening in the world? But
now you're not acknowledging that people don't acknowledge things. You can't. You're viewing it from your point of view. I can't say that all South Asians.
You're saying it's a first step.
I'm saying
highlighting it is a first step.
Take small steps.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a step.
It's patronising because you're a grown, not you, but these people are grown adults and they should know. I think it's patronising to say I'm making baby steps because you should have known.
Saying, and I completely agree. You're saying that it's not big enough. It's not a big enough step. But I'm saying at least it's something.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? At least it's a small step. We're getting there. You can't just go from 0 to 100.
No, you can't go from 0 to 100 because the movement is, who knows what changes we will see in our lifetime. Yeah. The changes that have happened in life so far have taken years, decades to happen. So, yeah.
I know what Lisa's saying because it's like, now people are talking about it, it's on people's lips. Let's seize the moment, let's change things, let's actually do things, let's put policy in place, and not just policy for the sake of it, but let's actually get organisations, institutions, let's tackle systemic racism properly. I completely get that.
And I absolutely agree.
I think some people feel like it's slipping because already it's changed.
It's been derailed.
It's been derailed, and also it's not on the front of our minds for a lot of people anymore, and I think that's what's frustrating because it was like we got there were global marches, people actually saw such a horrific thing happening on camera. What's next? And I think that's your frustration.
That's my frustration.
I am going to call out racism where I see it though, and I'm going to be more comfortable to do it because I think before there's that whole, you don't want to be seen to be aggressive, you don't want to seem to be chip on your shoulder. I hate that term.
I do think people are starting to call things out now. So for example, previously you spoke about taking the knee, right? Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary in the Conservative Party in the UK, I don't know if you guys heard, but he said something along the lines of he sees the symbol of taking the knee as subjugation and subordination rather than liberation. So that's offensive. And he also said he would never take the knee apart from 2 people. So he would only take the knee for 2 people: his wife, when he asked her to marry him, and the Queen. But you wouldn't take the knee for a movement. So for me, I have issues with that because I thought that was very insensitive when he said that in an interview.
Subjugation.
Because he sees it, he literally sees getting down on your knee.
He's lowering himself to take the knee.
And you also completely dismiss an entire movement that see this symbol as a power. I feel like people were putting him out there.
Yeah, I think to come up with a reason like that just shows that you weren't ready for the movement, because I'm not going to not get down on one knee because now it's subjugation, whatever terms I want to come up with it. If I was really down for that cause, I'd be down on one knee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a proposal, a massive cause, like people's lives actually matter, Black Lives Matter, to me I'm sorry, that just sounds silly. That's ridiculous. It's finding a reason not to take the knee, in my opinion. Because
also you're dismissing something that is so big in this movement. Because it's seen as a huge symbol.
I'm not lowering myself. It sounds like that kind of thing. Well, I'm not getting down on the knee, but why are you seeing it as lowering yourself? Supporting people is actually uplifting yourself.
And he was also mocking it because he was saying things like he feels that it's taken from the Game of Thrones. So it's like now you're just taking the mick, mate. Now you're just laughing about it.
But okay, if you don't know why Colin Kaepernick chose to take the knee, he was protesting about police brutality. Okay, first he started out by sitting out of a national anthem. He sat on the bench, and then an ex-military person told him, if you wanted to protest about something, about this, the best thing you can do is take the knee. That's the most respectful thing to do. So that's why he decided to take the knee. He didn't pluck it out of thin air. He had a reason why. Somebody told him, if you want to be respectful in the way you protest, this is how you do it. So,
and we know what happened there. Massively.
That was his last season. He wasn't employed after that in the NFL.
No. The NFL have just reversed their decision, by the way, a couple of weeks ago on that. So, and it took however many years that's taken, and it took this movement for them to do that. So, little changes, small changes have happened. and we've got to be grateful for them, but we've got to keep going. Deep conversation, it shouldn't be that deep, really. It's just saying Black Lives Matter. Let's talk about it. But some people find it a political issue, and they think it's a political issue,
and controversial, and hush hush, and can we bring this to the workplace? Can we bring this to the restaurant? Can we bring this to the toilet? Wherever you can bring it anywhere. That conversation can happen anywhere. Yeah. In my opinion. Anyway.
So, and I think some people might see themselves, I'm not political, so I'm not. This is not something I talk about.
I hate that, but that's so right. That is so true. They don't want to get into politics, but it's not politics. It's not political. Politics. It's not political at all.
Human rights.
Yeah. Obviously has become political, but just the phrase itself and the concept.
It's human.
Exactly.
I live in a bubble called London, and I'm around ethnic minority people all the time, and I went to a school that was pretty mixed and had a really high South Asian community, but there were black people of various different countries, also various different people from places in Europe, etc. So I can't remember a time where someone has directly called me something, or the N-word or something of that nature. And I think it's purely because I live in London. I don't think I would, I remember when I was doing my teacher training, and for the last week we were in Shropshire, and obviously it's a very, very predominantly white little town, and we were there, and we came off this coach, and everybody who was an ethnic minority was from London, and I was doing teacher training in Keele, and we got off this bus or this coach, and people were just staring, and I think that's crazy, because the world is made up of people of different colours. So I'd say that was definitely, and then it made me appreciate when I went back to London. I was like, I don't feel like that, mate. I don't feel like that, and I don't feel like that on a day-to-day basis. And I felt happy about that. I felt proud about that. One of the time was caught. I've told you guys a story. It was in the West Midlands somewhere, not going to name the city, and we were just sitting on the doorstep waiting for a delivery because my cousins had just moved into a new house, and a guy in a white van was driving by, shouted from his car van window the P word at us, which is ridiculous on so many levels. And inaccurate because
so they can't even be bothered to get their insults right.
And I remember thinking, you would slow down your van to shout that and go.
Yeah.
And we were kids.
Yeah.
I was young, much younger, and I just thought, so you're actually saying that to kids as well? You've actually put your van window down to scream racial profanity at children.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I think, though, we have to be careful with this saying that it doesn't exist in London, because it definitely does. And just when you were talking, I remember.
No, you're right.
I remembered my uni days, and going to clubs. And I remember two specific occasions going to clubs in London. One for my friend's birthday, black guy, and the whole group of us were black. We couldn't get into the club. And the black promoter told us, I'm not going to lie, guys, it's because you're all black and they think you're not going to spend money inside. So if you think it doesn't happen in London, it does, in various different ways. Obviously, this is a different example, and there are definitely more extreme examples. But Farah?
I also live in a bubble. In my town, it's one of the most diverse towns in the UK. So I'm quite lucky. I have white neighbours, Jamaican neighbours, Asian neighbours. So I haven't faced overt racism. Of course, I could have faced covert racism, but not massively affected me.
Okay. What about instances where you felt like you couldn't be fully yourself? Have you ever had that? Because we've seen this a lot. We saw on social media people saying your black colleagues probably are like having to kind of minimise their blackness in some way. 100%,
100 million trillion %. I've talked to you guys about this before. Just being really hyper aware of the angry black woman stereotype, which has no basis, because everybody should experience a range of human emotions.
I think a lot of the time, women of colour, black women in particular, can be seen, or there's this idea that they're aggressive. Yeah. If you're being assertive, you're being aggressive. And other women don't have that same stereotype attached to them. It's definitely a stereotype that is linked to black women, isn't it? So it's one of those negative stereotypes that people always play on.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about that in the workplace? That stereotype, and not even making sure, just being aware of it and trying not to play to it.
There are so many examples I could think of in the workplace of little, like microaggressions, right? Mm-hmm. Little things people have said. And I always think, why are you saying this to me? Or in front of me? So I'll just give 2 examples. One, a teacher had just got off the phone to a child's parent, because this child, I think it had been a Polish child, had done something. She was ringing the parent, to tell them, oh yeah, your child's done this, da 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 da. And when she got off the phone, she said to me, oh yeah, he's a Polish lad trying to do the black thing.
Oh gosh.
And I was like,
what is the black thing?
I don't know what the black thing is.
She must have known what the black thing was.
Exactly. She knows what the black thing is. But we know what she's trying. Anyway, maybe now if that happened, I would say something. But back then, unfortunately, I didn't say anything.
It's just something you go home and tell friends and family about.
Exactly.
Like, can you believe?
I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, wow, that's interesting that she said that.
Yeah.
Okay. Another time, I've had this quite a few times where people say things to me, and I think they mean it as a compliment. They're like, oh yeah, that child won't mess with you.
I think we talked about this before.
This other person, maybe a colleague, oh, they wouldn't mess with you.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because I think we talked about this before, and if I was in the room when that was said to you, I hear that. I hear that in a completely different way.
Yeah.
But maybe to our other colleague, they wouldn't use the word mess. I don't think they would use the word mess. They'd maybe say, you're a strict teacher, because you're right. I think it is a compliment. Yeah. But the language they've chosen.
Yeah, I didn't come to school to fight. You didn't come to school to
fight. Exactly.
So they wouldn't mess with you. I'm not trying to hit anybody. So I'm not understanding that. And they were talking about colleagues.
Yeah.
Not students.
Yeah. They were talking about a colleague. So that's interesting.
That's even worse.
I think that is worse.
Okay, but I'm convinced they thought that was a compliment.
Yeah.
I'm convinced they petitions that have come out following the George Floyd murder, and one of the ones that I've seen gain a lot of traction online, especially in the UK, is about decolonizing the curriculum. So what do you think about that one?
I think that's a really good initiative, and I think we definitely need to have a look at the curriculum in the UK, because I think the curriculum, there have been individuals that have said that the curriculum is ethnocentric, because it very much focuses on the experiences of white European, English being their first language, those sort of students. If we think about the languages taught in school, they tend to be European languages.
Yes.
If we think about history, it tends to be European history. Leaders, anyone that we sort of look at, they tend to be white males often. Yeah. So I think we definitely need to bring in a bit of diversity. Yeah. I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to ignore that the UK curriculum is ethnocentric, because it's in art, it's in English, the poets and writers that we look at in English, it's the musicians that we look at. I mean, it's all across the board. I did A-level history, and one of the topics that we did was the partitioning of India and Pakistan. I loved it. Yeah. We did that was one of our massive topics, and the teachers were good enough to understand that there was a lot of South Asian students in that school, but also we were really interested by it. It was relatable, and they knew things, and in the classroom they'd say, "Miss, it's really interesting that this is written like that in the book, but actually my parents told me such and such, my grandparents told me such and such," and it was fantastic. There's no reason why that can't happen more across the board with other subjects.
And also lower down, because
lower down,
level, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think lower down there's more choice on what you can put in the curriculum.
So for me, decolonizing the curriculum is about bringing in different kind of mentioning the waves of migration and the contribution that different people have had to the UK and to British history. I think
that should be a topic on its own. You are so right with that.
And I think because people don't know why you have so many Caribbeans in the UK, why you have so many Indians and Pakistanis, why you have Somalis. People don't understand why we have such large immigrant populations in London, especially, and we ignore the negative side of British Empire. Yeah,
absolutely.
We're not taught properly about it's the British history, so we should teach about it.
And to children who may have a particular view about the British Empire because of places they're from and what's happened, for instance.
Absolutely.
And I think there should be freedom to talk on that.
Yeah, exactly.
But even things with like Black History Month, I know not all schools do it. My school done it.
We did it as well.
But I think we need to focus.
We're talking about schools back in the UK.
Yeah, schools in the UK. I think we need to also focus on positive achievements because a lot of that, I remember from my experiences, it was quite negative. And then you have this perception as like a 13 or 14-year-old kid that of course you need to learn about slavery, of course you do, it's important, but you also need to learn about the achievements that Black people bring to the UK economy, like you said with migration. We need to learn about the achievements. It needs to be a bit more balanced.
Absolutely. How does a Black student feel who's learning about slavery from a British perspective, whips and lynching and shackles and all sorts of things, and not learning about the achievements?
And not learning anything about the rebellions and the slave rebellions.
And
they don't teach you about that.
And Black heroes who actually had a massive part in abolishing slavery, segregation, whatever it was. That's damaging to self-esteem, I think. Equally, teach uplift.
Yeah, exactly. We should definitely teach to empower and uplift. I think that is very, very important. We're going to talk about some books that we've read personally that we think might be beneficial to you and that we enjoyed. You're going to talk about shows, aren't you, then? So, Farah, do you want to go first?
So there's two books I can think of. The first book is by eddo-lodge, Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, which is a really interesting book because it was actually given to me in my old school by a student. So I remember in a sociology class, a kid showed me the book, and I'll be honest, I was slightly taken aback by the title. So I was kind of like, oh wow, that's different, and because I don't like generalizing. So if you're going to say you're not going to talk, obviously now I understand why she said that, and I love the book. But when I saw I'm no longer talking to white people about race,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Would you have taken at that time that book into the staff room, read it?
No way. No way.
Yeah.
No way. I
don't know, even though it's the #1 bestseller.
Isn't that weird?
Because of the title.
I don't have issues with the title at all though, no.
Because how you think other people would perceive the title.
Absolutely, if they have no knowledge on the book. So anyways, it was given to me by a student. I read it and I absolutely loved the book. I think there's so much that she talks about that's relevant to UK society, to her experience. There's just so much she talks about white privilege. For those that don't know what it is, again, I think that's a triggering word. But I think, if you're not sure about that term, please pick up her book and read it because she explains exactly what it is. Feminism. So I'll give you an example. She talks about her personal experience with racism, and she would go to these progressive groups. So she would go to these feminist groups. Feminists are progressive people, right? Because they want equality based on gender. But every time she would mention race, they would shut her down. They would completely dismiss her. So even though she would go to progressive groups, no one was really interested in her opinion.
About race.
About race. And I just think the way the book came about, it started off as a blog. She was really annoyed and frustrated. It then later translated or transcended into a book. So I think it's a really interesting book. The second book is Malcolm X's autobiography. I just find him a fascinating individual, if I'm being honest.
And that's a really good autobiography.
He mentions lots of things.
I love Akala. Everybody does, right? So he's got a book called Natives, in the Ruins of the Empire. That's what the book is called, and I like it because, again, like the eddo-lodge book, it is kind of based on the UK, even though he mentions all kinds of places, but he comes at it from a British perspective, which is good because lots of the time some people think it's an American problem and we don't have it, or it's not so bad in the UK. Of course, racism exists in the UK in a different way that exists in the States, so it's very, very good. Another book that I've seen on lots of recommended reading lists, and I've read it myself actually now, and I'm still trying to come up with my opinion of it, is White Fragility. So what I didn't realise when I started reading it, and then I did a bit more research, is that the book is aimed at white people. Okay, so Robin DiAngelo, the woman that writes the book, is a white woman writing about what she describes as white fragility to a white audience.
So there are a variety of different shows on television, I think, that have done a really good job of representation of systemic racism that black people face, especially black men, and police brutality. I think we've all seen When They See Us, and I think that had a huge impact on just the way we view police, not just being brutal, but in general arresting the wrong people, prosecuting the wrong people, having black men on remand for long periods of time when they've not committed a crime, the hate you give. Currently you've got the Khalif Browder story, which is really good. I'm not really going to touch on those because I think those are pretty obvious. They're just about systemic racism and the ways in which the system generally works against black men. But what I was talking to Farah about earlier actually was the movie by Self-Made, where Octavia Spencer, there's Tiffany Haddish is in it, Blair Underwood, quite an extensive black Hollywood list of actors and actresses. But what was really interesting is when I watched that, I really loved that. I thought it was great. It was about Madam C.J. Walker, who is an African American self-made millionaire, the first one. And also the first, woman of colour in general, who basically was a millionaire in America. I thought it was really good, but when I had done some research on her, because I didn't really know much about Madam C.J. Walker, apart from she had a massive hair care company, it was really interesting to see that there was a lot of mixed opinion on the representation of her story. I thought it was really interesting just to mention that I think that sometimes there's a lot of watering down of the stories of successful black people, and there was a lot in that movie that didn't actually happen in real life, which people were really annoyed about. And it portrayed a really toxic relationship between her and her husband, which I think, Farah, you were saying you've watched it as well, which showed really kind of like the stereotypes of black men in that, and actually that's apparently not very true of the relationship she had with her husband. He was really supportive, and for me, when I read or did research on it, I was really annoyed because when I read her actual story and the story of Annie Malone, who obviously she learned everything that she learned from, it didn't need the entertainment factor. I know it's a story inspired by Madame C.J. Walker, but for me it's really important how black people are represented, and she's an amazing woman, and I think that it just let me down. When I saw it after, I was just let down. I was like, okay, hang on a second, we didn't need all of the other entertainment factors in there, because it was such an interesting story on its own. This is a self-made millionaire, first African American, she's in the Guinness World Records for it. We didn't need all the other falsified storylines, and I think
because it came across as two black women pitting against each other,
and
then the husband's stuck in the middle,
and it touched on issues of colorism, which actually I thought was actually part of the story. So Annie Malone is a lighter skinned black woman who Madam C.J. Walker works for, and there's a lot of, in the movie there's a lot of I guess they're pitted against each other, where one of them is lighter and seen as more attractive, and the other one is a darker black woman who's obviously overweight, etc. And it actually was playing on colorism, I think, as opposed to bringing light to it. I just completely changed my mind on the entire thing. So if you've watched it, let us know what you think. And did you not know about Madam C.J. Walker or Annie Malone, and did you research? And then what did you go back and think about the movie after? Because it completely changed my mind. I think representation is really important.
So we're definitely going to talk more about this issue at another point. We've just kind of rambled and spoken about different things today. It's a massive issue. So thank you very much for watching, and let us know what you think.